Let's get your questions answered on today's Rookie Reply. My name is Ashley Kerr, and I am here with Tony J. Robinson.
And welcome to the Real Estate Rookie Podcast, where every week, 3 times a week, we bring you the inspiration, motivation, and stories you need to hear to kickstart your investing journey. Now, today we're going back into the BiggerPockets forums to get your questions answered. And again, guys, the forums are the absolute best place to go for you to get quick answers to all of your real estate investing questions. So today, we're going to hit questions like how to furnish a rental and get credit card points. How do you find up and coming neighborhoods for your real estate investing? What you need to know before you start investing, and when should rookies hire a bookkeeper?
So Tony, let's go first into the starting out discussions. Do you see a question in there? That would be a good one.
I do. I got one from Tyler. And Tyler says, I'm in my first house hack in Austin, Texas. I have 2 12-month room leases and a midterm rental in an ADU. Now, I get my midterm rental leads from Airbnb and do bookings through the Airbnb platform. And then I use apartments.com to manage my long-term tenants and collect rent. Now, the question is, what do I need to keep in mind for starting off on the right foot for bookkeeping? Any recommendations on software or recommendations on content to watch/read to learn the essentials as a beginner? Any feedback would be appreciated. Thanks. All right. So, first, Tyler, I want to say congratulations, man. I mean, you got 2 room rentals going on and you got an ADU. So I got to imagine you're probably getting a juicy return on this property in Texas.
Low cost of living.
Low cost of living, right? I mean, hopefully you're doing pretty good on at least breaking even, maybe even getting paid to live where you live right now. So I'll go with like the back half of that question first. Recommendations on content to read/watch. And I love Amanda Hahn and Mac McFarland's books on real estate tax strategy. And they have 2 volumes. Volume 1 is a little bit more beginner focused. Volume 2 is a little bit more advanced. But I like to start with those because it's beyond bookkeeping. It's just more so tax strategy. But I think those things are good to kind of lay that foundation from just a knowledge perspective of like the kind of accounting side of being a real estate investor.
Yeah. And as far as the software, I think there's a lot of great options out there. You can use the long-term property management software for the medium-term rental, and you could actually use it for short-term rentals. I've used Buildium before for your short-term rental, and you just have to link the Airbnb deposits into the account to show that when it shows up, it's a rental income because they have the nice bookkeeping, databases integrated with the property management software. One other thing too is you can use Stessa, which is assets spelled backward. It still blows Tony's mind when he hears that. But Tony, you used to use Stessa for your bookkeeping on your short-term rentals, and then now you use QuickBooks, which is also what I use too. What was your experience with Stessa?
Stessa was great. I think it's built specifically for real estate investing. So there's a lot of built-in functionality that supports our business model. And like Ashley said, it's free and it's super easy to use. QuickBooks is way more complex, and I personally don't manage anything inside of QuickBooks now. It's mostly our bookkeeper who's doing all of that. But I think Stessa is a great starting spot if you're, the solopreneur kind of running this by yourself, because it gives you the foundation without being too complicated.
Yeah, and Stessa, I think, is great for starting out. If you are doing the bookkeeping and you have no knowledge really of what to do or very vague, it simplifies it as to like, as an investor, here's, the chart of accounts. If you don't even know what that means, then go with Stessa or something similar, because QuickBooks has so many options and Stessa is a lot more affordable too than QuickBooks. So there's definitely different options out there for you. One thing that is a huge factor to me is how visually appealing it is for me to look at is sometimes how I choose a software or a database, because I want to look at the software and it not be confusing. And I want to be able to read it as fast as possible to get the information that I need and then move on to the next thing too. So that's always one thing I take into consideration when choosing software too. But you can use RentRedi. RentRedi has a great bookkeeping software integrated in it too. That would work for all your rentals.
Oh, just one last caveat for the short-term rental, midterm rental bookkeeping side of things. And this is actually feedback I got from my bookkeeper. You have to be careful when you're using the bank deposits to build out your P&Ls for your rentals or for your short-term rentals or medium-term rentals, because those payouts do not include the actual gross booking value. The payout you're getting is less any fees that Airbnb or Vrbo have taken out. So if you really want an accurate number of the top line revenue for your properties, you can't use the bank deposits. You actually have to use the data that's inside of Airbnb to say, hey, here was the top line revenue. And you have to manually add in the fees that Airbnb took out, and that'll equal out to the actual deposits into your bank account. So that was one shift we had to make when we went from doing it ourselves inside of Sessa to having a bookkeeper who was coaching us through these things. And it makes sense, right? Because if you're almost shortchanging what the overall revenue is for your property if you don't do it the right way.
Hopefully finding the right software can be a good start for you as to what to do for bookkeeping, reading the books on BiggerPockets.com that Tony recommended, but also looking into hiring somebody to do your bookkeeping. It might not be as expensive as you think. Tony, what was the cost of your first bookkeeper? Wasn't it at like $6 an hour or something like that?
It was very inexpensive. Yeah, somewhere between $4 to $6 an hour.
Yeah.
And she was great for like that beginning phase of our business because all she really had to do was look at each transaction, apply with the right category, upload any receipts. So it was a very simple process. So we found her on, I think, Upwork. And she had like an accounting degree in the Philippines, and she worked great. She actually still works with us today, but she just kind of supports our bookkeeper with some of the more administrative things, but super inexpensive way to get support there.
So actually, in a few days, we're going to be releasing a little crash course on bookkeeping for rookie investors on the podcast. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that episode.
Now, Ashley, how about you? What questions from the BP forums are sticking out to you?
So right now I'm in the market trends and data discussions. And here's a good one. Okay, this one is asked by Claudia. How do you know if a neighborhood has the potential of going up in price? What should investors be looking for? Ooh, this is a good question. I recently bought a property that is supposedly in an area that is up and coming, in an area of good appreciation. We're going to rent it out for the next 3 to 5 years and then hopefully sell it for a lot more money than I bought it for and put into it. So some of the things we kind of looked at was, first, we relied heavily on our real estate agent who sold a lot of homes in that area and helped people sell homes and buy them in that area. So going off of her knowledge of that area. So first, you have to have a good understanding of what that knowledge is that your real estate agent has that you're working with, because if they've never done a deal there, or they have no experience in that market and they're just guessing like, oh, I think this neighborhood will be great, things like that. Make sure they actually have knowledge and where they're getting their data from or their experience from, where they're suggesting this will be a good area of appreciation. But you always want to verify and you want to get into the numbers and the data. So in the Real Estate Rookie Bootcamp, we actually do this for a whole week. We have a session that literally is just market analysis. And this is where we're diving into if this area has a good appreciation or not. So some of the things we're looking at is growth. Are there people moving into this area? And one thing to really remember when analyzing a market is define down to the neighborhood. Because if I looked at just the city of Buffalo, it's going to be skewed numbers because there's good parts, there's bad parts, there's parts that are depreciating, there's parts appreciating. So you want to really define what your market is. And then there's great websites where you can actually go and just pull all the information without having to go to all these city websites now. So one is Neighborhood Scout and the other one is Bright Investor. So you can go into these and you'll be able to pull a lot of data about the neighborhoods. So once you pull the data, looking at the crime, what has the appreciation been in this neighborhood? What's happening with the industries? What's happening with retail? Is there more retail coming? Are retail closing? Are more restaurants coming? Are restaurants closing? Along those lines, what's going on in the neighborhood? Pick a couple neighborhoods comparable in that same city and see what they're doing. So you have something to compare your data to. Because you could look at the data of a neighborhood and be like, I think this is good. I don't know. What does it mean if the crime rate is 7? Is that good? Is that bad? What does that mean? And you can compare to other neighborhoods. So maybe there is an area that you already know has already seen great appreciation. Go back to the 5 years prior when it wasn't such a wonderful, and what happened in the next 5 years that they had the appreciation growth. And then look at your neighborhood. Are those things happening in that neighborhood? And I think that's a really great starting point as to figuring out, is there going to be appreciation and growth by just comparing the data with other neighborhoods in that city that have seen that appreciation and that growth.
Yeah, Ash, you hit on so many good points. And I think one, I really do love listening to On the Market to kind of get information about these different things. Dave Meyer, who's the host of that podcast, does a phenomenal job of breaking down the different data points to look at. Real Estate by the Numbers, another book that Dave Meyer and Jay Scott put together. It's a thick book. There's a lot of information there, but those are two of the smartest people I've ever met in the world of real estate investing. But BP actually just released a tool, and it's the market finder tool. So if you go to biggerpockets.com/find a market, okay, biggerpockets.com/find a market. And BP has put together this incredibly useful tool where there's a map of the United States with different cities and areas. And you can look at things like appreciation, affordability, the population growth, the rent to price ratio. And they give these write-ups of these different cities and these different locations to help you identify which cities maybe match with what it is that you're looking for. So if you want a high appreciation market, there is a tool that can kind of help you dig into that. So I always think going back to the data is the best way to know if a city is going to increase in value. Now, there's also the maybe less hard facts that you can look at. Like if you know that maybe a certain big employer is coming to town. Well, typically when a big employer opens up, especially if it's like a white collar place where there's going to be a lot of high earning individuals coming into town. Okay, well, cool. That's probably going to prop up the median household income in that area. So there's both cold hard facts you can look at about the historical data, but there's also that somewhat forward looking information you can use to make some assumptions or some bets on what property values might do in the future.
Yeah, one recommendation is checking out episode 429, where we actually go into how you can use AI to actually analyze your market and to find data too.
All right, so guys, we love talking about real estate and we love answering questions just like this with our rookie audience, and we would absolutely love it and appreciate it if you could hit that follow button on your favorite podcast app or wherever it is you're listening. The more folks we get following the podcast, the more folks we can reach, and we can reach people, good things to happen.
So Tony, let's go to your favorite section, the forums, and let's go to the short-term rental discussions. Is there a good one you see there you want to answer?
Yeah, so I'm in the short-term rental discussions, and there's a question from Chad. So here's what he's saying. Any suggestions on which method is a better way to furnish a rental property? I'm debating whether to use a dedicated business account that is funded to ensure proper tax records versus using a personal credit card so I can accumulate points. If I maintain proper records, I can't see why the personal credit card is a bad option. Any opinions? So the first thing I'll say is that you're saying, like, should I use a dedicated business account or should I use a personal credit card? I think maybe a happy middle point, Chad, is just to use a business credit card, right? So if you already have this LLC established, go to Chase or American Express or wherever and get that business credit card and set that up. So it is under your business account and you get those points as well. Now, I can say we use both personal and business credit cards in our business, but the personal credit cards that we use, they're only for business use. So we try not to mix expenses on those cards. So like, I love the Chase Sapphire card, but we're able to spend a lot of money on that card through our business from all the different things that we do. So I keep that card, even though it's in my personal name, I use it for business expenses, and we're able to get a lot of points through that card. But then I also have the Chase Business Inc. card, which I use for that business as well. So you can use a personal credit card, but the advice that I got is just make sure that if you're going to use a personal card for business expenses, only run business expenses through it and don't commingle.
See, I wonder if there's like some way that the corporate val could be pierced because it has your personal name on the credit card. And I don't know the answer to that. I know that I've been given the same advice to never mix business purchases and personal purchases in a bank account or a credit card. But I'm curious about if you are using, like if you used, even if you had a personal account and you were using that for your LLC, even if it didn't have personal expenses, it was still in your individual name, or for the credit card, I wonder how that would work. But I think there's still great rewards for business credit cards too, that you can, that honestly, I think the sign up bonus right now for the Chase business card is actually higher than the Chase Sapphire personal card. And so you can still use those for, still, and with the LLCs, you can set up multiple cards, whereas in your personal name, it's reported on your personal credit. So as you add cards, they show up on your credit report. And also, like, Chase does a limit. You can only have like 5 Chase cards in your name or something like that. And then, but with the business ones, you can go and open them up and like they don't show up on your credit at all, that you have all of this debt. Because part of your credit report is that if you have a huge credit line, you want to see that your credit utilization is actually like, I think it's like around 20%. You don't want your credit utilization to be 30% because that affects your credit and actually decreases your credit. So I know we're just talking about like a little bit of points, a little bit of dip. But if you are actually trying to rebuild your credit, like making these decisions of how it will affect your credit can actually make a difference trying to build your credit back up. So that's something else to look into too. Then we're on the business side. The only credit card that if you get it in a business name, it will report on your personal credit is Capital One. I don't know if maybe they changed it, but at least 3 or 4 years ago, that was the way that it was. It would still show up on your credit report. So that's something else to look into too. And then also, if you have different LLCs, you can set up a business card for each LLC. And like right now with I think Inc. business is like 80,000 bonus points when you sign up. Each LLC now those points, you can actually call Chase and they will combine those points for you if you own multiple LLCs and have multiple cards, as long as it's your name that's attached to the businesses. So I could do a whole episode on credit card reward points. Yeah. And I'm not even an expert. I haven't flew to Europe yet in first class with, things, but one day I will get a reward that will fly me that way and not pay for it. So
I think one thing that I see, and we don't do this in our business because I'm too lazy from a bookkeeping perspective, but I know some people who will run like all of their property related expenses against their business credit cards and then use their debit cards or their checking accounts to pay back those cards. And obviously the benefit of that is that these are things you're going to be spending on anyway. So if you can get points for those, like you're going to rack up the points pretty quickly. And we've got 30 properties in our portfolio. We've got the boutique hotel. Like we could probably run a lot of points, a lot of charges to the credit card. But the reason I don't do that is because then someone's got to go back and be able to say, okay, well, this charge was for this property, so let me make a payment from this account on this card, and this charge was for this property, so let me make a payment on this account from that card. And there's just so much more admin work that goes into trying to separate those. But the way that we do it is we run all of our actual property transactions against the actual checking account, and each checking account is set up separately for each property. So I never have to question, was this charge for property A or property B? Because we know that account is just for that property. So Ash, I don't know. What do you think? Am I crazy for not getting all those credit card points?
No, I agree, because you would literally be printing out a statement every month and having to mark which one it was, or someone in your business would have to go through, like you would have to have a folder of here's all of the charges on the credit card. And when you went and made that purchase, you would have to be marking every single one. This is for X property. This is for XYZ. And that is so time consuming. So there are a lot of things too that I won't put on a credit card, especially if an LLC doesn't have a credit card that we really use. But if there is an LLC that has a designated credit card, then I will like put the Wi-Fi on there, the utilities on there if I can, to be on auto pay, just to get those little extra points, even though it's not that much, those little things. But when we are trying to hit a bonus on a credit card to get the sign up bonus, I will, like, property taxes. Sometimes you can pay property taxes online and they charge a fee, but if you look at it, like I just paid property taxes yesterday for a couple properties. I paid them online, and you could either pay with a credit card or pay ACH. There was a fee for both of them. And the fee to use a credit card was not that much more than the fee was to just have it automatically withdrawn. And at that point, it was like, okay, I'm just gonna use a credit card. I'll get the points because it's not that much big difference in a fee, and I'll get that much back in reward points by putting this large, I think it was like $6,000 onto the credit card. But when I do that, I'm super diligent and I literally go and pay the credit card right away, so that I'm not having to go back and to actually figure out like, okay, what was that expense for, or whatever. And yeah, so I will do that sometimes.
Yeah, more legwork, right? But you get more points at the end of the day. So
yeah, like I'm taking the kids we're going on a cruise with another investor family, Kyle Wilson from Drunk Real Estate and Ashley Wilson, who you may have seen around BiggerPockets before. And it's all paid for with points. So
big win. Now, I'm looking at the starting out discussions within the forum, and one of our rookies says, I'm still building my sunny day reserves and just starting my education on real estate investing. What books do you recommend I start with for my education? I've never heard of my sunny day reserves. I've heard of rainy day, but never sunny day. So I like the optimism here. So books to start out with.
Well, maybe it's not for rainy day stuff. Maybe it's for sunny day. Like, it's a sunny day, I'm going to hit the boat and I need my sunny day money to pay for gas for the boat.
I like that. Yeah, my sunny day. Yeah. So there's so many good books out there, and we could probably do an entire episode just on books that we've read that we've enjoyed. I do think just from a mindset perspective, Rich Dad Poor Dad is probably required reading. I feel like that one gives you a lot of the foundational, just like ideas of what it means to be not only a real estate investor, but an entrepreneur. I really do enjoy Cash Flow Quadrant. I think that's another really good book that kind of pushes your mindset thinking to the next level. There's a few other books that aren't necessarily real estate investing, but they're really focused on building a business. I love the book Traction by Gino Wickman. That book itself, I think it can be a little tough to translate down to smaller businesses like ours. But again, I think the framework and the methodologies are things that translate pretty well. But Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz, a phenomenal book that's really built for like the small business solopreneurs, like the people who are buying their first real estate deals. And again, none of what I've just mentioned are specific to real estate investing, but I think they do a really good job of laying that foundation of approaching your real estate investing like a true entrepreneur and not someone who's just putting down, a couple 10,000, 30,000, however many thousands of dollars into a property.
Is anyone else listening upset that Tony didn't mention any of our own books?
I wanted to start with like the foundational entrepreneurship books, and then we'll get into all the good BP stuff.
First of all, Real Estate Rookie, 90 Days to Your First Investment by Ashley Kerr. And then also, if you want to partner with someone, you can find Real Estate Partnerships by Tony and myself. So those are two highly recommended books that you could check out. But also one of the beginner books that I really loved that I think had great foundations and wasn't like overwhelming with information. It was very like cut to the point, was Retire Early with Real Estate with Chad Carson. That's also a BiggerPockets book too. You can find it on the BiggerPockets bookstore, but that was one of my favorite ones. Then, of course, all Brandon Turner's books are great for getting started. Brandon's
got a lot of great books. David Green, so I read his first, actually. It was Long Distance Real Estate Investing and The Burr Book, two great books, and obviously one of the most popular real estate books on the Amazon podcast. But look, guys, if you want to see all the BiggerPockets books that are available, because there are lots and lots, depending on where you're at, head over to biggerpockets.com/bookstore, and you guys can pick up or at least browse all of the different options that are out there for you.
Yeah, another one that I really love if you're going to rehab any kind of property or even just for maintenance on your rental, just having an understanding of what maintenance will cost on your rental is Estimating Rehabs by Jay Scott. I think it's a great foundational book to have an understanding of the workings of a property and the malfunctions it can have. That's a great one too.
I actually reread that book, or at least portions of it, before we did our first big rehab on the short-term rental side. So I like browsed through that one, and I did the book on flipping houses that Jay Scott also wrote. And yeah, like I said, I think we mentioned earlier in this episode, but Jay Scott is one of the smartest people that I've met when it comes to real estate investing and a phenomenal author. So both of those books are great options.
So Tony, kind of along those lines of, books to get started, what do you think is like the most important skill that somebody needs to have or to learn before they actually jump into real estate?
It's a great question, Ashley, and I don't want to get too philosophical here, but I think it depends on the person, because you have to identify where your natural skill set lies, like what are you just naturally good at, and then you have to identify what will I actually enjoy doing within this business. Everything else outside of that tight circle, delegate to someone else. So, for example, say that you're really, really good at the numbers. Like you can project the income for a flip, for multifamily, for a wholesale deal, whatever it may be, but like you are just really skilled in the Excel sheets and coming up with these different projections. But maybe you hate talking to people. So then maybe door knocking and trying to source your own deals isn't the right path for you for acquisition. And you've got to really try and network with wholesalers or agents to help you find your properties, right? Now, on the flip side, say that you love talking to people. Say that you could sell ice to an Eskimo, right? Like you're just really gifted with the words and you love talking to people. Then maybe you can focus all of your time on maybe raising private capital and getting deals directly from sellers. But maybe you suck at managing projects, right? Maybe you can't hold a budget to save your life. Well, now you've got to delegate that responsibility to someone else. So, a lot of people say that finding good deals and being able to raise capital are two of the most important skills in real estate investing. But I truly do believe that you've got to lean into what you're uniquely qualified and gifted at, and then find ways to support yourself with other folks who can fill in those gaps for you.
Yeah, I think that the thing I would add to that is problem solving and not giving up. Because I think there's so many curveballs that are thrown at you in real estate investing, and they could be good, they could be bad, they could be not as bad as you think they are at the moment. But having the skill set to actually, not even the skill set really, but having the motivation to want to solve the problem and not to give up. Making a phone call can change the outcome of a problem, doing some research, talking to someone, doing whatever you can to figure out what's a good solution, even if that solution ends up not being the right thing, but you still have the courage to take action and to try to resolve it instead of just being, you know what, I'm giving up, I'm done, I'm not going to do this anymore. And I think that if you keep trucking on, that it's going to be worth it for you. But being able to problem solve, I think, is a really, really great skill to have when it comes to real estate investing, because you're not going to know everything day one. And there are going to be mistakes that are going to be made. But what are you going to do about those mistakes? How are you going to learn from those lessons that were created? And next time you'll know how to solve that one problem. But that would be my biggest thing, is having the understanding it's not going to go 100% your way. There will be problems, there will be bumps in the road, but as long as you are determined and motivated, and that goes back to having your why, you should be able to overcome it in some way. And you know what? Maybe it's not the best case scenario that you've wanted, and it actually is detrimental to you of what happened in that scenario, but you do everything to get yourself out of it. And even if you haven't made yourself whole, you lost a ton of money, you're making sure that your family's still fed. All these things are happening because you're pushing through. So determination, not giving up, and also problem solving.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Ashley. And they say that you don't really fail at something until you give up. Mm-hmm. And I think so many people don't give themselves enough opportunities to fail in order to find that elusive success. So yeah, I think sticking with it, the persistence is an incredible skill set. And I love that you added that piece. And
I want to add that there are ways that are perceived as failure and giving up, but they are actually solving the problem. So like if you're in the middle of remodeling and you realize this was more than you got into, making the decision to sell the property as is, that's not, in a sense, it sounds like giving up, but you're solving the problem. You're getting yourself out of that property before it comes worse for you. So I don't want to make the statement that, just you got to keep going on the property. You got to keep digging yourself in that hole. If the best solution is to sell that property, make yourself whole, and then start over again, that's problem solving. That's not giving up. And that's not failure at all.
Well, what a great way to end the episode, Ashley, on such a motivational note. I'm going to start calling you Tony Robbins.
Is that like the only time I've ever gave anything motivational?
No. No, it was,
the most serious
good.
I've ever gotten. Usually Tony's always
that.
the good one with the mindset, things like that. I was actually reading off, a blog post you had written 5 years ago.
You had a chat GPT prompt. Yeah.
Well, thank you guys so much for joining us for today's Rookie Reply episode. If you have questions, head into the BiggerPockets forums, and you may even get a quicker response than ending up on this episode. But we do love having you guys submit your questions and getting to answer them for you. It helps tons of rookies learn and even helps us learn some things. So thank you so much for those that do submit your questions. If you haven't already, check out the biggerpockets.com/bookstore. We gave a lot of great book recommendations for you to check out if you are looking for a new read. I'm Ashley and he's Tony, and we'll see you guys on the next episode.
This BiggerPockets podcast is produced by Daniel Zarati, edited by Exodus Media, copywriting by Calico Content.
I'm Ashley, he's Tony, and you have been listening to Real Estate Rookie.
And if you want your questions answered on the show, go to biggerpockets.com/reply.